Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monday Night Travel with Rick Steves Europe. My name is Gabe Gunning, and I have the privilege of joining you all as your host this evening as we set off on not one, not two, but three grand European journeys with one of our Monday Night Travel favorites. Now, without further ado, tonight we are going to be adventuring from glistening lakes to Baltic capitals to tropical islands, and our guide on this journey is going to be the one, the only Washington native, Moroccan resident, and European traveler, Lucas Peters. Lucas, welcome back to Monday Night Travel.
Hey, this is Tuesday morning travel, but thanks for where I am. But thanks for having me on, Gabe.
Yeah, I mean, you actually last time that you joined us for a show on Morocco, you were here with us in person. Tonight, I'm getting hotel room vibes from your setup. Can you tell us where you are beaming in from?
Yeah, I'm beaming to you from Tallinn, Estonia. So we are kind of on the northeastern corner of Europe. I'm looking over at Helsinki, right? Helsinki, Finland's right across the water here. And yeah, we're about 10 hours difference. So it is a little after 4 a.m. here. So forgive me my coffee.
Well, Tallinn is quite different than your usual Tangier, and I'm looking forward to jumping in to what brought you to Tallinn. But tonight we are the grand European journeys that we're going to set off on are inspired by your newest guidebook. You've written multiple guidebooks, but this one is called Grand European Journeys. I know also the last time you were, oh, there it is. The last time you were with us talking about Morocco, you mentioned your Moroccan tour company, which is Journey Beyond Travel. I'm gathering that you really like the word journey. And I thought that maybe you could start out by telling us what is a journey to you? What maybe sets it apart from just a trip or a vacation? Why do you like that word? And how did it inspire this book and the journeys that we're going to go on tonight?
Hey, Gabe, that's a great question. So the idea for me of journey, so we have the idea of tourism, and then we have the idea of travel. And for a long time, there's, are you a traveler? Are you a tourist? I have no problem being a tourist. I really don't, not at all. But when I am thinking about how travel or tourism can affect you, I think about internal and external journeys we take as a part of like transformation. And for me, that was kind of part of it. Interestingly enough, though, I mean, I did not decide on the title for this book. That is almost an accident. Like, really, that was like editorial. That was like, hey, we have a few ideas. What do you think about this one? And, like all of them had this word journey in it. I think, and that might have been part of our just like exploratory brainstorming process. And I kept on probably coming back to it. But ultimately, like, it was kind of like, I think Grace, one of my main editor here, who was like, "Yeah, we need to use like European journeys somehow." I really like this. I was like, "Me too. Yeah, we should." I love this terminology.
Well, I think it's great, especially for our Rick Steve style of travel, which I know is also the style of travel you espouse. Um, and also, I know both you and I are literature nerds, and right, it's kind of the classic underpinnings of story are the hero's journey, right?
Yeah,
Like the Greek
yeah.
classics where somebody leaves home, they have an adventure, they come back changed, and like that's the hero's journey. So I like that word as
Yeah.
um, you know, travel that changes you, hopefully for the better.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. This kind of like odyssey that we have, like that is seems external, but truly it's internal, when we get done with it. Yeah.
well, you have a few odysseys that you're going to take us on tonight. I am excited about them. So I think let's get started, and I'm eager to hear where you are going to take us.
All right. So, what I'd like to do maybe first is just talk just a bit about how Grand European Journeys is a little bit different of a book, right? So, usually I write like Morocco guidebooks. That's what I'm known for. I'm a Morocco guidebook guy. And so when Moon came to me and said, "Hey, what do you think about this Europe book? We have this idea." I was like, "Guys, I can't write like a Europe guidebook. I don't know all these countries as in depth as I do Morocco, not even close. And they told me, well, what we're really looking at doing isn't so much a guidebook, but more of like a how to travel with like inspirational itineraries for people to put together. And so we circled around this idea for a while. And that's how you get this 40 kind of unforgettable, different types of journeys, different types of trips that you can take. So the idea is when we're coming to Europe, a lot of times we have that idea of like riding the railroads. We're gonna hop on, a train and kind of go from there. So that's one type of journey. But what if you want to do a road trip? What if you just want to connect a couple capitals? What if you want to do the Camino de Santiago? How do you connect some of these things together? And I know you and I were just talking about the a certain someone that doing
Oh,
the
yes, the Camino. My
yeah.
parents are currently
Yeah.
a week away from finishing the Camino.
That's awesome, man. And so that the when I was explaining this book to you, I was saying, you don't just come to Europe just to do the Camino de Santiago. Usually you're going to do a little time in Madrid, maybe, say, hey, we finish over here at the end of the trail, and then we're so close to Portugal. Why not continue on into Portugal, right? And not a lot of guidebooks put that all together for you to be able for you to see and picture and imagine like how those itineraries can kind of work together. So this is the conceit with the book, is like making a lot of small modular things so you can kind of see what are your goals for yourself that you want to set out as a traveler. Like what kind of goals do you have, and then how do they couple with also what's available, or where else you might are already be going or be interested in going to. So that's the sort of the idea, is making these kind of modular in a way.
And Lucas, I love what you said about kind of Morocco is the place where you're an expert.
Yeah.
And with this book, you were just kind of coming at it just from more of a traveler point of view. And that's, also how we forge our Rick Steves Europe guidebooks is, of course, they're written with the help of a lot of experts. But then also they're updated by our editorial staff who, are going to go edit the Scandinavia book, and they're not a Scandinavian tour guide, but they're coming at it with a traveler's eyes. And so it's always great to have that balance of the input of experts, but also going through that expert advice with traveler's eyes to see what is actually helpful and what actually works. So
Bingo.
when
Yeah.
when you
Yeah,
joined
yeah,
us
that's
for Morocco
exactly.
before, you kind of did as an expert, and tonight I'm excited to hear from you more as like Lucas, the traveler, and getting to just kind of more your trip report of some of these places.
Yeah, and so this is the idea. This is more of, I guess if I could be as expert of a like country or a place expert as I can be with Morocco, this is me having traveled Europe for 25 years and being maybe an expert European traveler, but not necessarily an expert in like Lithuania. You know what I mean? Like I've been to Lithuania a few times, but like not like this, So not in the way that I couldn't write like a Lithuanian guidebook, but I do feel more than equipped to be like, all right, so if you have a couple days, here's what we're gonna do. So yeah, so that's the conceit. So what I thought I'd do here is just talk about a few journeys, right? So what we're going to do today, we're going to take 3 different journeys. We're going to do Zagreb, Ljubljana, and Trieste, all in the upper Adriatic, historically linked, really neat little corner of Europe over there. Then we'll head up to the Baltics, where I am now, right? So we'll do Vilnius, Riga, and Tallinn. And then I thought we'd wrap up with something semi-tropical with the Canary Islands, just kind of change pace a little bit. Shout out to my little friend Soli over there, whose parents picked him up a copy of Grand European Journeys. He's currently planning their next trip. Like I love it when an 8-year-old gets to decide like where mom and dad are going next. It's fantastic.
And also, Lucas, I just want to point out, if people want fresh content,
I mean,
you told me some of these photos in this presentation have been taken like within the past 48 hours. So
yeah, this was
people are
yesterday. Let me go back to this. Yeah, this was literally just yesterday. I was
this
like, I
is
need a
like
little
the
like photo
farmer's
slide.
market of content.
Yeah. The freshest of fresh content, right? So here we go. We're at Zagreb, Ljubljana, and Trieste. Best time to visit. All right, you can visit in the summer, but man, I find late July through August can just be a little bit nuts with the crowds. In this sort of like part of the Adriatic, a lot of people are, especially Europeans, they're coming here for their August vacations. So And mostly they're packing up those beaches. We're not really going to touch on any of the beaches here, but because people are going to the beaches, they're in and out of these cities quite a bit, which adds to a sort of more crowded feel. And also, I mean, to be frank, like into like late July and August, it can get pretty hot too. So depending on what kind of traveler you are. But for me, probably my favorite time to visit would probably be September. In this part, like right when the crowds kind of dissipate, you still have that great summer weather. Mediterranean's still warm enough if you wanted to get to the beaches and stuff to enjoy some beach time. So that's a great time, I think. So on this one, we start in Zagreb. So we're going to start in Croatia. It's about a little over 1 million people. It's a Catholic country. And I thought one thing I really wanted to touch on was the fact that they had an earthquake on March 22nd, 2020, that was pretty big. And it's going to change kind of the experience of Zagreb for the next couple of years still. This is something we were talking about earlier, and I lost this in the news of what was going on in March 2020.
What else could have possibly been happening?
What could have been happening? Yeah. So with that was one thing I didn't know about. I missed that in the news. So it was surprising to me how much of Zagreb is kind of under construction here. And Otto Reisinger, we'll get to him here in a little bit too. But a couple things about Zagreb that I do really, really appreciate. The people are fantastic. You have these young ladies that are participating in this local initiative by the Ministry of Tourism to promote their traditional clothes and stuff. I think it is important that I have the right to use this. That's totally fine. And they don't want a tip. They don't want it. Like, I'm so used to Morocco. Like, it's like, oh yeah, here's, 50 dirhams, about €5 for, for a picture, if you want a picture of a local a lot of times, but here, no money, no tips, no anything. Just like, that's what we do. That's our job. So I thought that was really fun. So they're laundry workers from, 100 years ago from the countryside. That's who they're kind of playing, that I thought was fun. Adds a little bit of theatricality to your Croatian experience. And then the botanical gardens. Yeah, sorry, Gabe. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to ask, because I know I've actually not been to Croatia, but I've worked at a travel company long enough to know that it's the capital.
Yeah.
And did you get a sense in the same way that Washington, D.C. has kind of like the Smithsonian and kind of there's a sense that as the capital, it's its job to kind of catalog the national cultural identity. Do you see a little bit more of that in Zagreb? Maybe because it's the
Absolutely.
capital?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's like a big national museum you can go to and everything that is listed like in the guidebook and stuff. For myself for this trip, to be frank, like I skipped some of the museums, or I went in and did a really cursory kind of look at them, mostly because I was a little bit time short and I had work to do for you guys to put the slideshow together. And I was like, I don't know if I need to revisit the National Museum of Croatia this time, but you do find that there, and one of the things I think with doing these sort of trips to, if you're not familiar with a local culture, like for me, if you're not familiar with a local culture, a local history, like that National Museum's a great way to get a sense of that national identity or the construction of a national identity. Because for a long time, of course, Croatia, though it is its own country, it did belong to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which is a thing that's going to connect also Slovenia and of course, Yugoslavia and all this stuff. You have historically a lot of overlapping connections, and now it's they are independent as an entity. So how they're telling that story, I think, is really interesting. You can also get that from a great tour to guide too. Like what I did on this tour, I concentrated a little bit more on taking a couple walking tours and using that to kind of meet a really cool local guide and stuff. One of the big things you will see, and one of the things I love to do, and Gabe, I know you like to do this too. We like to go to local markets, get some picnic stuff. So I happened to hit a really rainy day, in Zagreb, like my first big day there, where I had planned out, I was going to the market and everything. One of the things at the local market, of course, is it still functions even when it's rainy. So just get yourself an umbrella or put on your waterproofs and head out with everybody else.
Lucas, we Seattleites don't use umbrellas. We just invest in a good raincoat. You know that.
Yeah, I know. You know, it's fun. I was doing these Instagram reels, and I was like, I had this really, I still have it over here, that really colorful umbrella, and I was like, you know, as a Seattleite, like I never used an umbrella, but I see everybody else doing it, and I had the thing is, I was taking pictures, so I had my camera gear, and I was like, you know, like, and it's not windy, so I was like, all right, I'll use an umbrella, and then it's actually in some of my other photos because I thought it was colorful. It's all rainbow umbrella, so it's really, really, you know, got shots of yellow and red and stuff, and otherwise dreary sort of weather. But you will see, like, here's the main cathedral. You know, you will see it still along with a lot of other stuff under like reconstruction right now in Zagreb. One of the things I was not prepared for in Croatia is really great wine too, and food. Like I just didn't remember this from like my last time going there. I mean, this is, you know, over 10 years ago now. I'm probably a little bit of a different sort of traveler too. I think we do change as travelers over the years, where yeah, at some point maybe we age out of sleeping at train stations, you know. So you know, and we do develop, like I have a bit more of a sense of appreciation for a good wine and stuff as well. So that's one thing, you know, like kind of being able to go out for a really nice meal, get a nice glass of wine, I thought was really great. And then roasted chestnuts, you know, we were talking about this too. This is one of my favorite like European snacks. I didn't have until just a few years ago, you know, like it wasn't until 2017, I think I had my first like roasted chestnuts, and I was like, these are
I've
amazing.
still never had one, Lucas, so I feel like I'll have to put that on my next European checklist.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're in wintertime, I mean, that's the chestnut season, you know, when you get into like fall and winter, you know, this is when you have the, just like the Christmas song, you know, the chestnuts roasted on an open fire, you know, little Jack Frost over
It's
here.
my favorite Christmas song. I can't believe I haven't had a roasted chestnut. I'm a fraud.
And, you
Um,
know, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
well, I was gonna say, I mean, this meal looks very fancy to me. And for me, I think I'm at the point that I'm still fairly budget conscious when I travel. But I like to, you'll actually almost never find me eating at kind of a mid, like just a kind of cheap restaurant. Because either if I go really cheap and I'm gonna just get stuff from a grocery store and kind of do a picnic, or I'm going to then kind of save up and have go to a nicer restaurant and have a bit of a splurge meal. How do you kind of pick your splurge meal strategically?
Yeah, very much the same way. Still, I think I tend to skip lunch a lot, honestly, when I'm out and about. I I instead of having lunch, it'll be like roasted chestnuts on the way, or some trail mix, or some fresh fruit from the market, or something. And then yeah, it's the occasional sit down, really nice dinner. You
Mm.
know, I do a lot of street food, like local street foods as well, which typically aren't expensive at all. I can't think of a real a street food that is expensive at all anywhere I've ever traveled. So yeah, I do like a lot of local street foods, but similar, you know, like I want to sit down and like, what's the kind of best of the best cuisine, you know, and try to budget for that, you know. And to be fair, this wasn't that expensive. I want to say for a glass of wine, I think I had a soup with this meal as well. I had my little espresso at the end, and true European fashion, and you know, like a nice bit of you know, white fish and everything well presented. I want to say this was about 30 euros, maybe. You know, I
Oh
mean,
wow,
yeah,
it's
it looked,
deceptive then.
yeah, it looks so much more expensive than it was, but it was a really nice restaurant. You know, it's really great. The botanical gardens, of course, I thought were great. The That's been a thing for me lately. I've been trying to make sure I get out into the local kind of, yeah, botanical if they have it. One thing I learned here is these lily pads over here. I forget the names of them. I have them in my notes somewhere, but these lily pads, they grow up to like 6 feet across and apparently can hold the weight of an adult.
Well, that's okay. My next travel checklist on my next trip. Number one, eat a chestnut. Number two, take a nap on a lily pad.
This sounds amazing. So Otto Reisinger, I wanted to get back to him. So he's a cartoonist, and recently his grandson opened a museum of all his cartoon work. Now, Otto Reisinger, I didn't know who he is. My wife is into cartoons and stuff. She knows who this guy is. He's like a well-known, super award-winning guy. He's been in the New Yorker a bunch of times, Playboy as well back in the US. He's also been in Japan and all over like the European newspapers and stuff. So for 50 years or so, this guy was like doing a lot of cartoon work. and poking fun at everything we poke fun at. So here on the left is funny. There's the local family that goes out to the local restaurant, and they're like, what are these tourists making us pay for? Like, why are the prices so high? And I think for any of us who've back in Seattle, been in Pike Place Market or something like that, or been at San Marco Square on Venice, we can relate. Like tourism does tend to kind of push prices up. And that's Marco over there. So the little selfie over here. So that's Marco, myself, and the cartoon in the middle. That's his grandpa. That's how his Otto Reisinger used to always draw himself in the comics. But I really like this little slice of Croatia in here because it gives us a sense of humor. Like I think different places we go to, there's a different sort of sense of humor, and it's nice to kind of get to know that, and also just a bit of levity. With all the national museums and all the kind of national identity building. Some of the other places we go to, you're dealing with like the Holocaust and stuff, and all that's like history can be really heavy. And I think it's nice to throw in a bit of levity in there as well, and it's not too many museums you go to that are, we're seeing these like kind of cheesy museums of torture. Like how that's awful. But I want a cartoon museum. Like that seems like a lot of fun to me. But I thought it was a really super well done little museum, a fun little look at a person that helped bring kind of Croatia to life for me, and then right outside of, so just like 30 minutes outside of Zagreb is Samobar, which is like this just picturesque little village. It's kind of a nice little getaway there. I cheated a little bit on this trip. So what I did is I hired a private driver to take me from Zagreb to Ljubljana, with the idea that I wanted to make some stops along the way. Right, because there's a couple, like there's a place I hadn't been to yet that I wanted to get to, so I wanted to make sure that I can get to Lake Bled. Lake Bled's amazing. I hit it on this just gorgeous day, right? So we were already in Zagreb, and then now we're here, and I'm just like, oh, this is perfect. So this is like Green Lake on steroids to me. This is just amazing. So Lake Bled's fantastic. You have this castle up on the cliff face over here. You can go out, explore it by boat. There's a whole walking path all the way around, or running path, biking. I saw people doing kind of everything. And then, of course, there's this like island down here that is the only island in all of Slovenia. And this little island over here is there's a little monastery on it, which is, yeah, it's gorgeous. Yeah, it's a magical day there. And then up in the top right, there's in the castle up on the cliff face, there's a little like printing press there. That's for me, being a little bit of a book nerd and stuff, I love seeing these kind of like old technologies. I don't care if it's a printing press or a typewriter or whatever. I'm kind of a sucker for these things. But here you can see how they early days, like Gutenberg sort of style, were putting stuff together. And of course, we have these ladies from the castle kind of looking down. You have a sense of just like how far up you are, which makes for a great day trip, really. Or like if you're going to connect, a fun way to connect. So if you're doing a road trip, that's one way to do it. And then you find yourself in Ljubljana. So this is in Slovenia, 300,000 people, so a much smaller city. It is also a Catholic country, also a very
Kind
clean.
of. What is
Kind of.
kind of majority Catholic?
So there's a lot of non-believers in Slovenia. There's a lot of people that don't identify with any particular religion. So although I think it's something like 30 odd percent Catholic, it's nothing like you find in other like in Croatia or some like Lithuania we'll go to, or Spain, where it's like majority Catholic. It's really not. I would say it's sort of a majority Catholic, but a really big majority of yeah, it's kind of non-religious people as well. So that's something to yeah, I mean, something to just realize there. You have a lot of people that have this kind of Catholic upbringing who have kind of shunned it and gone toward atheism or something similar to that. Maybe just agnosticism. And it is, man, it is a very clean, very green city. I mean, the whole of Slovenia really is like it's almost like Switzerland in a way, like how clean it is. I mean, Switzerland's known for being a very, very clean city, you know. Slovenia as well. And when the sun comes out after rain and everything, I mean, even more so, you know. I had a couple moments here where I was reminded of like Seattle in this, you know, like early summer, like when we get the first big blue skies right after the rain and everything just kind of smells clean and looks clean and everything. You know, I had some of this kind of happening as I was going through, but unlike Seattle. So when I arrived, they were doing the Ljubljana Olympics for little kids, and so this kid over here on the left, she's climbing a rock wall that's like 3 stories high, you know. I mean, it's all safe and stuff, of course, but they have like this whole circuit of stuff right in the main square of the city where kind of everything happens. And I thought that was just fantastic. You know, it's a very outdoors facing sort of culture. Again, similar to like I think how we are growing up in Seattle, where it's, you know, on the weekends, a lot of us are out on the trails, we're in the parks, you know, we're kind of getting out there. And I think Ljubljana, you know, the people there just share that, you know, they're outdoors. They want to get out, they want to hike, they want to rock climb, they want to go skiing, snowboarding, etc. You know.
And Lucas, I know from watching the Olympics that the best female sport climber in the world is Janja Garnbret, who's from Slovenia. So I wonder if she's inspiring a whole generation of young female climbers. Maybe that's what you were seeing there.
No, oh, that's really cool. So that was a circuit of like 30 different things. So there was like everything from like table tennis to weightlifting to, you know, all sorts of stuff. But that was obviously a really, really cool thing, you know, like the 3-story wall that they're climbing up. And so yeah, I bet there has to be something there. So yeah, so again, going to the markets, it was Mandarin season, so made sure I got some mandarins. Tried some of the local food, like this kind of cabbage bean soup, a barley soup, a sausage basically wrapped in a croissant. Like, what's not to like about that? So again, like I went kind of nuts here because I wanted to try a little bit of everything, and in doing so, I met this like group of people from Ohio. So that's Bob, Sal, Frankie, and Tom. And and it turns out they like knew like one of the moon guides I did, so they're like, no way, that's you. So it's pretty fun. So we took a selfie, and then yeah, we shared some food. I was like, guys, I ordered too much. I just wanted to try some of the different stuff here. I hadn't tried this stuff before. So fun little street food spot. You know, I think even all of this cost me like 12 euros or something like that, with the beer. Yeah, which is not bad at all. And of course, you got the dragon. So do you remember Jason and the Argonauts?
Vaguely.
Right. So there's a whole like so part of Jason and the Argonauts is they take the boat across, they take the boat and then they land and then they take the boat apart and they carry it across the land and then they reassemble it and sail on, you know. And apparently historically, I'll put this in quotes, right? This happened in Ljubljana is where they had like tracked across with their boat, right? And so this like little tale of Jason the Argonauts has like this sort of sense of Ljubljana to it. And they've taken the dragon as being one of the major kind of elements of the city. So there's a dragon bridge, which is a really cool sculpture, and they have a great riverfront, man. Like that was just like like the thing with Ljubljana is it's one of these places that it's just a pleasure to walk around. You know, it really is a very comfortable European city where you can easily spend a few days there, not feel like you have to do a lot of sightseeing. There's the big castle, of course, on the top to see. There are a handful of little museums, but really it's just a well-preserved like city with the Julian Alps in the background and you know, the nice local market and everything. And that's it. That's Ljubljana. You know, you should go live it. You know, that's a sort of a place more than anything else. You kind of want to go live it, I think, in a way. And then to get to Trieste, right? So you could do this by train, you can do this, you know, by car, you can do this in a lot of different, and by bus. You know, bus is a good way to connect. I ended up doing this by train. So this is I'm connecting by train here. I got in sort of late at night and woke up in the morning to some more didn't rain, but just kind of gray clouds. And so revisiting Trieste here. So it's a smaller city, 200,000 people, although somehow to me it felt bigger than Ljubljana, and maybe even bigger than Zagreb for some reason. It might have to do with it's a bit more hilly. So because it is like like the main part of the city you're going to walk around is kind of flat, but then there's going to be a few things you want to get up to. So you're going to kind of be walking up and down hill a little bit more. It kind of almost sits in a bowl a little bit, or like a half a bowl, you know. And again, yeah, it's Italian. We're in Italy here, right? So it's Italian. We're speaking Italian. You know, so you can brush that off. A lot of people write about it in comparison to Venice. My feeling is, yeah, it's a water city, but it's almost more like Rome, but like with a facade of Venice. Like I really feel like the gridded layout of it, you know, it's nothing like walking the cities of Venice. Like in Venice, it's not so much a grid, you know, it's like a kind of a mishmash of, yeah, these different streets with these different little bridges that you're walking around and everything. And this felt more gridded out in the way that Rome's gridded out, with a few facades of places that are like Venice. And they do have like this Grand Canal, right? But that's the Grand Canal. Like it looks nothing like the Grand Canal in Venice. You know, like for me, it was like, if you're thinking it's like this, you know, like Venice, you're going to be disappointed. It's I don't think so. But if you think, hey, it's like Rome kind of on the water a little bit more, then I think it's kind of interesting. You know, that's kind of a way to think about it. But you do have like some main, you know, big main squares, some great statues, a handful of cool museums and churches that you can spend some time going through. And me, I was there for the coffee. So this is what I'm here for.
Don't they have a special kind of coffee,
Yeah,
Lucas?
yeah. So the thing you order locally, I'll go back to this, is a capo and B. That's what this is, right? So this is like basically it's like a little cappuccino in a cup. So this little cappuccino in this particular kind of cup, which is weirdly in Morocco, we do coffee like this too. So this is like, yeah, Morocco. This is, if you order a coffee, this is just how you get it. So I'm really pretty used to drinking coffee like this, now without the without the little handle there, right? And this, I mean, so I'm in the Cafe Tomaseo with, I'm having this croissant, I'm having this coffee, I'm looking at in this, like this, the most decorated cafe maybe I've ever been in. You know, it's from the 1830, and it was €3. You know, like
Huh.
that's a good breakfast. That's not expensive at all. Like I'll take it. But when you are on the Grand Canal, you're enjoying the cafe culture there. You know, I think for me, that's kind of what you want to do in Trieste. You know, definitely, yeah, go see what's kind of interesting to you. But there is like some, it's just one of those great pedestrian cities to walk around. Lots of shops, lots of cafes, lots of kind of local culture. You know, they don't get the kind of tourism that you're going to see in Rome or Venice or Florence or even Milan, you know. So it's a little bit more off-ish the beaten path, you know. It's not quite as popular. And of course there
And
is.
Lucas, I'm actually going to jump in and interrupt because those that watched our Beyond the Best of Italy show a few months ago, where we looked at some kind of hidden gems in Italy, Cameron actually did a section on Trieste. So for those that want another perspective from Cameron, you can find that show in our archives.
I want to go back and watch that now. That's
You'll
how
have
I
to go
should have
back and
watched
watch it.
that. I should have watched that a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, no, that's great. And then the one thing, of course, is for us book nerds, you know, James Joyce, he lived there for 16 years, I think,
Huh.
for a long time resident of Trieste. And this is where he wrote most of Ulysses. So you'll see the statue commemorating James Joyce. One of the things I noticed here, a lot of people walked up, took pictures of the statue, and literally were asking their friends, "So who is this guy?" It's so typical, right? I just patiently am waiting for everyone to get out of the way so I can have a nice little picture of James. So I did take a selfie with him. I should have probably included that. And then Trieste, you know, of course, you're right on the water. So there's some cool water sports. If you like kayaking and stuff, I thought this for me would have been fun to get out and do. But you can do some different sorts of kind of paddle boat kayaking. You're in this kind of protected little port right there, which is really nice. I would like to take a moment to encourage people not to use cruise ships. I think they're just probably the worst way to travel. I think they're horrible for the local economy. They're awful for the environment. I get the draw. I really do get the draw of, you know, why people might do cruises. A lot of my family does, you know, and I'm just, the more I travel, the more I see kind of the negative impact of that sort of tourism on places like Trieste. Like Trieste, totally charming and great stuff and all that. But then you hit these, the crowds coming in from the cruise ships, and it changes what that whole port looks like and everything. And there's a hotel. There's actually a really nice hotel right next to that. And I was imagining you're on this waterfront hotel and you're imagining like, oh yeah, I got the waterfront view. I'm gonna have this great sunset, and then you're looking at the ass end of this giant ship. Like that would be awful. Like that would just that would be the worst. So yeah, so don't use cruise ships, guys. Come on. There's better ways to travel. But yeah, Italy's just so darn charming, man. The scooters, the little Fiats, like I just love this stuff. Um, so yeah, so from Trieste, we're gonna head on. So we're gonna crack open your copy of Grand European Journeys. And then what I decided to do this time is take a quick flight from Trieste up to Vilnius. So I'm going to start here in the Baltics. We're going to connect some Baltic capitals here. And we're going to do Vilnius, Riga, and Tallinn, where I'm coming from. Best time of year. Again, this is a place that in August can get pretty nuts. I don't think Vilnius quite so much, but definitely Riga and Tallinn. They're a bit more touristy, I think, in a way. And that August with the other European travelers coming up here can get kind of crazy. As we get into with Riga in particular, it's also a bit of a weekend destination for a lot of other Europeans as well. So that they're kind of drawn here on the weekends. But I think again, you hit that kind of spring into early summer. You get here September and October. I would even say if you like wintertime, like wintertime here would be kind of special too. I'll show you a couple things that I think would be really interesting to do during the winter here. So we're starting in Vilnius, right? We're going to start in the capital of Lithuania. So one quick note on Lithuania. All right. So years ago, traveling, I wasn't concerned with language too much. I was, I'd been working on French and Arabic and even Spanish and stuff, but I had not thought about using local languages that much. And I just sort of assumed the Baltics were like all Russian speaking. I just assumed it was like, oh, Slavic, Russian, Dobre den, whatever I'm going to get by with. And I hadn't really paid much attention to the fact that, oh yeah, not at all. Like local languages are something completely different, right? So Lithuanian's one of the oldest Proto-Indo-European languages with relations to like Sanskrit. I find this fascinating now, so I was doing my best to like try to learn some Lithuanian. Interestingly, in Lithuania, one of the things you'll say when you're greeting someone, like a common hello, is labas, right? Labas. And in Morocco, we use labas as a sort of like, hi, how are you? You'll tell people the salam alaikum and all that stuff, of course, like that's the kind of Muslim greeting. But before the Muslims came, there was other languages, other greetings. One of them, I think, is labas, is like how there's a relation there somehow. I find that incredible. We're also using that as a greeting, it is a Catholic country. Also, interestingly, in fact, the last European country to give up its pagan beliefs and convert to Catholicism, which again, I didn't know. And I thought that was pretty neat. And I guess one of the things I'll say about going back through Lithuania and stuff, when you're traveling, like I think a lot of us, we grow up with, Greek and Roman history. A lot of us will learn, something about Napoleon maybe, or, we'll get into British history, especially as it pertains to like, early US history and stuff. Not a lot of us study the Baltics. I would say that's not something we usually cover in school. And I think that coming to a country like Lithuania, and the other ones we're covering up here with Latvia and Estonia as well, I think one of the interesting things here is learning another window of history, like another sort of story, and another people and another culture and like a completely other place that, probably hadn't come to before. So some of the stuff like how do you access some of this? So some of it's for me is like with humor, with language, with food, So I love this Lithuanian saying like, not my garden, not my beans. It's like none of my business, right? But I love this because it's also like the idea of like I was told that the idea is like the pig is raiding the other person's garden. So it's almost this also voyeuristic thing. It's almost like not my garden, not my beans, but I'm still gonna watch. Like so while this stuff's happening, I'm still gonna like be watching, right? I just love this, right? So again, yeah, so I love this sort of thing. So I'm accessing it. For me, culture, humor, language, food, these are some of the big points for me. I loved going into the Hallis market, Hallis Sturgis, kind of seeing what they had on offer there.
Ooh, now
Digging,
this
yeah.
is my stuff, Lucas. You know I have a huge sweet tooth. What
Yeah.
was like your best sweet treat that you had in the Baltics?
So okay, this right here on the left here, I was like, yeah, there's beautiful sweet treats, whatever. But like, man, these fried donut balls are amazing. There's like this cream donut thing with powdered sugar on top, and yeah, they're warm and delicious and incredible. So yeah, I had more than one of those. Um, and then yeah, a lot of potatoes, sausage, that sort of stuff. They do have a big beer culture. So as you get into the Baltics, we're in Croatia, Slovenia. I was trying a lot of the wines there. Obviously Italy as well. Here it's kind of more beers and stuff. So beers and liquors. So I thought, hey, in Lithuania, why not try some different Lithuanian beers? So I had a nice little beer sampler there. This is also a spot where it's like amber is a big thing. And so here you can find, and there's actually like little touristic amber museums here. Oh, I was going to pull that out. I actually picked up a piece of this for my son. My son's 8 years old and he collects rocks and fossils and stuff. So that's a souvenir from my travels over here. So I got him a little ant trapped in a piece of amber, which is amber, if you didn't know, it's fossilized, hardened tree sap, right? So this is like tree sap that's just been hardened, fossilized over the years, and it captures bugs, as we all know from Jurassic Park. I think, right? And I think we all know this from like, yeah, Jurassic Park.
Tell your son to be careful with that piece of amber.
I know, watch out. Yeah, thank you, Steven Spielberg. So we're going to Trakai Castle over here. So this is just about 45 minutes right outside of Vilnius. It's a reconstructed castle. It was in ruins under Soviet control. So this is part of the world, of course, that was under Soviet control for a long time. And Soviets did reconstruct this, and it makes for like a nice look at like old Vilnius, where you're seeing how it was like a seat of power, how it was at one point back, in I think it was like 1400s. It was like one of the bigger sort of empires in Europe, with this as the capital. And it expanded down, toward Istanbul, where you get a small group of people called the Karims, who were Jewish Turks who came up to protect the castle. They were hired by the king. And I think it was about 200 or so families originally were hired to come up, and they settled there. And there's still a small community of these Jewish Turks with their own particular language, culture, history, food. So here you have a sort of a pastry that they make. They do sweet versions, savory versions of like these stuffed pastries, that one of the only spots you'll be able to have this in the world is right here in at Trakai Castle. That I thought was pretty cool. So again, neat little look at history, man. Just like we're going and we're discovering new stuff. I think that's great. And then we're moving on to Riga. So I this time, so in the book, I'll say, so in Grand European Journeys, I did this as a train trip, and that's how I originally did this. This time around, I thought I'd try the bus system to see how that's worked. And I tell you what, in the last like decade, the bus system's really improved. So there's more times, there's more availabilities, really comfortable. It's about a 4-hour drive. All the buses have like bathrooms. The one I use, Lux Express, is like 20 euros for a ticket for each of these to go between. And they have like, it's like a plane, man. There's like a little seat with TV screens and stuff on it, which I hadn't seen that before in a bus. So so anyway, that's a cool way to connect. But we're in Riga, architectural, just amazing. Um, right here, we are in the capital of Latvia. So Latvia is and Latvian is related to Lithuanian. So it's thought Lithuanian's a little bit older. Latvian is based in some parts on Lithuanian, and then so somehow these two languages really communicate to each other pretty well. About 600,000 people. Unlike Lithuania, this is a Lutheran country. So this is part of the reform and everything. So interesting about that. And we'll see this again in Estonia. And they're known for like Art Nouveau architecture as well. Just in general, like the architecture here is just really, really, really cool. But you also see like stag and hen parties, these bachelorette parties. So Italy, Spain, Germans, and British people. I saw a lot, and I've heard that there are a few other countries maybe, but those to me it seemed that they were the most represented in terms of I was there on a weekend. These are the kind of parties I saw, and that is a thing. Like Riga is known around Europe for being a place that you go to kind of party for a weekend, and it's a fun place for like bachelorette parties and bachelor parties and stuff. Me, I'm kind of in it
Maybe
for the
maybe a good place to go to plan for on a weekday if you would like to
art.
avoid that.
Exactly. So if you want to avoid it, go for the weekday.
Though
Um,
if I know our Monday night travelers, I mean they just want to be out partying all night. That's
all night
our
long. I would just go to the dance clubs. But so the Art Nouveau, I mean, this is just amazing. Like for me, I could just sit here and like look at a building like this for hours, man. There's just so much going on. I mean, Art Nouveau is just kind of over the top. And so like I found myself like just catching like these little details from these buildings and just like I mean, this one with the kind of yellow stonework. I was telling my wife, I was like, I don't should we move here? Like this building looks amazing, right? Like I want this like statue of this lady at my doorway every time I'm going home. Like that's incredible. Yeah, I mean, just some crazy cool buildings. Again, kind of more of a beer culture. Great cafes too. There's some just like really, really wonderful cafes there. I'm going to butcher the name here, but the one on the right here, the most romantic cafe in Riga, Parishnim. Uh, Man, delicious coffee, really good sweets, really fun staff. I definitely spent a couple hours there just writing notes in my journal and stuff, catching the vibe of the local culture. But yeah, here's some of the stuff you'll see. You'll see these it was very musical, to be fair. Like I saw all sorts of different like buskers and street musicians out. But you see people down here doing their wedding photo, and clearly, they were there, doing the bachelorette party stuff. Definitely saw my fair share of those. And then there is like a small canal system in Riga that you can take some boats around. And again, I hit that Seattle vibe in this early summer where, or like maybe spring where like, the rains had been there and then it clears out. You get a sunny day. Everyone's out of the parks and stuff. So that was kind of like my feeling right here in Riga. Fun city. Weirdly, Vilnius is probably my favorite out of these three for some reason. I feel like Riga with the kind of stag parties and stuff. There's a little bit of that sort of vibe to it. Now, Tallinn. So Tallinn, okay. When we get up to Tallinn, again, I'm taking the bus. It's 4 hours on the bus. I'm in Tallinn. Tallinn, I feel like is a city that shouldn't exist. Like I felt like I was walking in like a film studio. It is almost too pretty. Like it really is. It's just too gorgeous. If you've ever done like a little like a weekend over in Leavenworth, Washington, it feels a little like that. Like it's a place that you're like, wow, is this like a replicated sort of medieval city? No, it's been there and it's just so well preserved. So this one is like for walking around an old town and just like being in picturesque Europe. Tallinn just hit it for me. It was great. But we'll talk about why it was my favorite of the Baltics here in a second. But a couple things to know. It's a recent country, kind of like Latvia as well. So Estonia is a recent country, getting its independence in 1991. It first was a country in 1918. That was the first time it had ever been an independent country. The people of Estonia have been constantly occupied, from everybody, I think from the Germans and the Soviets to the Swedes and Finns and everything. So it's always been sort of an occupied place. But again, it's Lutheran. and it's a huge startup hub too, which is I knew Estonia had a bit of a startup culture. I didn't know how big it was, but you'll see lots of kind of startups here. But the main draw, again, the old city. You know, you walk around this old medieval city, just incredibly picturesque. It's the kind of place you can stroll around and lose yourself in for a little bit, duck into a cafe, have a bite to eat. Um, yeah, take all the pictures you want. The It's kind of capped at the top by this very classical Russian cathedral that you can go into. Um, and you have a sense of what, yeah, I guess because we are pretty close to Russia. So like that, and when Russia occupied it, like what that kind of felt like here as well. You can also go into, well, I should go back here. So Troika over here, the orange building, Troika is actually like a Russian themed restaurant as well, right? So you can kind of get into like a little bit of Russian heritage and culture here in a way that you maybe wouldn't access in other parts of Europe, particularly right now, you know. And then sitting on the old town square too, I think is like that's sort of what you do, man. You sit down, you have a beer or a coffee or something, and you just take it in, you know. And I definitely enjoyed some hot wine that the as one does. And the other thing with Estonia that I love, and I, Gabe, you're gonna love this, is chocolate.
I love this.
There's a place called Chocolala that you can actually do if you book ahead of time. You can go and do actually a chocolate making workshop, which I think is super fun. Like I love these kind of get your hands on, do a little workshop experience. But you can book that ahead of time in Chocolala, and man, yeah, I just kind of sat down. And I was like, give me some samples of some popular stuff, and she served it to me with like a big cup of hot cocoa too. So that was my lunch. You know, you want to talk about
And
like what you do for
I
lunch?
was I was gonna say, you told me that this was your lunch today. Uh,
Yeah.
so this is what's giving you the energy to stay up late at night, is all the chocolates you ate for lunch.
There you go. Yeah, it's still there, man. All that dark chocolate really, you know, it's that it's a different sort of caffeine, right? And then so and kind of like Otto Reisinger in Zagreb, you know, here I learned about Veno Luke, who was a grandfather of Estonian puppetry. And Estonia, I didn't know puppetry was a thing here, right? Like it was just one of those cool things I sort of got to discover this time where I was like, oh yeah, there's a whole really interesting history of puppetry and like the theater of puppets and how we're using storytelling with our children. And I think for me personally, like one of the reasons I really sort of vibed with this museum is for the last, I think 6 years now, maybe a little bit longer, 7 years. I've had like little hand puppets at home, and there's one we call the magician. And every night when my kids go to bed, they call the magician, and the magician comes and brings them magical dreams. Right. So I'm doing like puppetry with my kids, just like, you know, the magician comes in and is like, oh, nice to see you again, blah, blah, blah. And he makes some jokes and then gives them funny dreams, and then they go to sleep. I've been doing that for 7 years, and I was like, oh, there is like, yeah, professionals doing this too for entertainment. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's great. And if you've ever been in Paris, of course, you know, we have the Théâtre de Marionnettes that are still performed in a lot of the public parks and gardens. You know, these marionette theaters, especially for kids, you know, that are telling like the story Pinocchio, and other kind of classic tales. So yeah, so we got our final one. We're gonna head off to the Canary Islands. So we've been through, you know, the upper Adriatic, we've been doing the Balkans, and so on the water, I thought would head over to the Canary Islands. Again, I was choosing places where I don't think at least in my travels, I don't think I see as many American travelers. Like in Estonia, I should go back and say why it's not my favorite. So there is a lot of the tourism crowd from cruise ships and day trippers from Finland. And this is the place where I saw probably the most Americans. Nothing against us American travelers. I love seeing Americans out on the road, but it did have that feeling of a place that like a Leavenworth, you go for a weekend or something like that. And yeah, so it felt a little more touristy maybe to me. The Canary Islands, again, we're going to get into touristy. This is European touristy. You don't see many Americans here, though. Americans don't come here. A lot of Europeans do. This is sort of like a European Hawaii in a way. And kind of like Hawaii, I think there's a cool way to tackle that, right? So we're in Spain. We're speaking Spanish. The whole islands have a population of about 2.2 million. Of course, like in Spain, it's Catholic in terms of religion. There's 8 main islands. It's also known for this whistling language, Silva Gomera, which is pretty fun.
And
Um,
Lucas, I'm
um,
curious, how did the Canary Islands get the name the Canary Islands?
they're actually named after dogs. We aren't sure if it was from dogs or from sea dogs, from seals, right? So when the very, very first kind of explorers landed on what we now know as the Canaries, it was named after canines. And we know that they used to call seals sea dogs. So we don't know if they met a group of actual dogs or a group of sea dogs that were like barking, like, seals bark.
Huh.
So yeah, so it comes from the Canaries. And then we get our canary, the bird is actually named after the islands.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating circuitous little etymology there.
Factoids. so so the thing, of course, you're on the islands, you want to get out on the water, you don't want to do water stuff, so you can swim with sea turtles, you can go look at pilot whale dolphins, or sorry, pilot whales, look at dolphins. Like earlier on, there's a picture of me, or a picture I took out with the dolphins. You can go kayaking, paddle boarding, surfing. There's all these lounging on the beach. There's all these sort of like water beachy based activities that you can do. Sort of like Hawaii, it's also volcanic, right? So one of the things, I'm on an inexpensive Ryanair flight here, right? So when you look out, you'll see Tiede, which El Tiede is the highest peak in Spain, the third tallest volcano in the world. And it is a set of volcano islands. In fact, when I was there last time, it was shortly after the volcano in La Palma formed. It was crazy. The only time in my life probably I will ever see a newly formed volcano that doesn't yet have a name. Like they hadn't even named it. It was on the island of La Palma. Here's a volcano that just exploded, formed. Like the whole cone and everything was forming there, and we don't have a name for it yet. Which was, yeah, that was something else. But like Hawaii, right? So I've been to Kauai a couple times. I've been to Maui a few times. And one of the things about the Hawaiian Islands that, like, yes, you do some beach time, you get out in the water and stuff. For me, I'm always drawn inland, and inland's away from most of the tourists, most of the travelers, they're in a resort, they stay in their resort, they stay at the beach, they'll do whatever resorty activities they have. Once you get out of that, then you kind of have a sense of the islands, the sense of the people. And for me, that's what I'm drawn to. I'm drawn into going inland and, exploring the mountains, exploring kind of the nature there, which is what I did, when I was in the Canaries. So, hiking El Tiede here. I like the like gradations here. Exploring the black lava fields from, its last eruption, a long time ago. Actually picked up a little piece here for my son. Talking about, my son, who I got him the piece of amber this time, with the little bit. When I was out in the Canaries, I got him a little piece of black lava that I took home. So, he has in his like little fossil rock collection over there.
Lucas, are
Um,
you supposed to be taking lava rocks through customs?
I was told it was okay.
Okay, I'm like,
Yeah,
this is
I
being
swear.
recorded and posted
I
online.
swear, I swear, I was told it was okay. Sorry, Spanish authorities. If you tell me it's wrong, I will return it. But I was told it was fine. But again, like you look around, like there's nobody here. You know what I mean? Like you're in these spots, and like if you love nature, it's a great spot to get out into nature. It's not hard to get away from these kind of beach crowds over here.
Well,
Uh,
Lucas, I was curious. I see a photo like this, and
yeah.
I'll enjoy a day at the beach here and there. But sometimes I feel like there's kind of a pervasive beach community that, regardless of what country you're in, it can kind of the global beach community can kind of take over more of the local culture. When you were
Mm,
here, that's actually part of the reason that in our Rick Steves guidebooks we don't always cover a ton of islands, because sometimes it feels like they're a little bit more beachy and resorty and a little less historical and culturally rich. Did you feel like there was still a strong local culture and good cultural sites in the Canary Islands?
Yes, which is one of the reasons I actually fought to include them in a way, because one of the things I'd like to do with some of these island destinations is promote how to tour them kind of, in my mind, responsibly. Like get away from the resorts. Like they're there. Like here, I want to show you. Here's the resort. These things are there. Like, and you can find them all over the world. But you drive 20 minutes and you're somewhere else. You're in a 400-year-old Spanish town, walking the streets. You're up in the mountains a little bit in these like beautifully flowered balconies. You're going into the Bodegon Plaza, and eating the local specialties, which are, you wouldn't expect it, but like a rabbit, you're going to be eating rabbit, goat, that sort of thing, which you're thinking islands, you're probably thinking fish and stuff, but a lot of the local specialties here are actually like they're shepherded animals or things that were easily like easy to hunt, and they are mountainous. So like goats make sense, you have goats on a mountain, that sort of thing. So you can, and you can get into like, these old, this is a church that has been there since at least the 1400s. It was thought that this is where Christopher Columbus did his last prayers before setting sail across the Atlantic, right? So they're like pieces of history, man, like that they're there. It's fantastic. It's wonderful to be able to touch this. It's wonderful to be able to meet, this is Rodrigo, and he's showing me the whistling language, right? So Silba Gomera is one of the few languages we have. It's a whistling language. And why they have this whistling language is the whistle sounds carry across the valleys. So you can whistle the news from village to village. You can whistle a conversation from village to village, which I thought is amazing. Like the sound of these whistles can travel like kilometers, like you could travel like a mile or two, like down these valleys, which again, like it makes sense. It's fantastic. There's still 22,000 people that still speak this language. It's a whistling language. That's incredible. And it's only like really on in the Canaries, more specifically on the Isle of Gomera. And this is another place where you can dig into like banana wine of all things, so, you go inland a little bit, you'll see banana plantations. And yeah, and they are making wine out of it now, which is surprisingly good, actually.
Well, Lucas, I think I'm not much of a wine connoisseur, so it's always really over my head when I'm at a wine tasting and they're asking you to make these creative comparisons of, oh, does it taste leathery or does it taste like minerals or hints of summer fruits? What would be kind of your poetic description of the taste of the banana wine?
So soplete is what we're calling this banana wine. And the first thing I want to tell people is it doesn't taste like bananas. Like it's bananas. It doesn't taste like bananas. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird. Like you would expect a heavy banana. It's not. It's a lot lighter than you would think. It's a lot more like a typical, almost like a Sauvignon Blanc or something like that. Like it's yeah, it has a brightness to it. It has a clarity, obviously, but it has a yeah, almost like a lighter feel than you would. For me, I was thinking banana. It's got to be sugary, sweet, heavy, that sort of thing. Not really at all. Like they do a fantastic job here of like getting a lot of that kind of heavy sweetness out of it when they're producing this wine, which I thought was it's amazing. It's incredible.
Well, the way you describe it, it does sound appealing.
Yeah, it's worth trying. It's definitely worth trying. To be fair, not my favorite wine I've ever had, but liked it a lot more than I thought I would. So yeah, I was happy to try a few glasses while I was there. I brought a couple bottles home, as one does. And then on the island of La Gomera. So this is a forest that was from like the age of dinosaurs, man. It's not a Jurassic forest. It comes from up here. I want to say it's Triassic is where it's from. People can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Like you can look that up pretty easily online. But it is like the forest of La Gomera. It is a very ancient forest, one of the oldest forests we have in the world. And for me, like even with the clouds and the fog and everything, it just added to a certain spot of nature. Again, we're in the Canary Islands. We're in a place that people you're thinking you're going for beach and tropical and all that. I'm going at altitude into like an old forest that's all wet and like foggy, And this to me is great. Like I love this sort of thing, and the sort of thing you can find on the Canaries. I guess the last thing I want to say is I went there with my mom, right? So I took my mom. This is one of the fun things of what I get to do is like I get to travel with my mom sometimes, and the rest of my family, my kids, my wife, etc. But a lot of times going back to the idea of journeys, right? It's not only you and yourself, and it's who you're doing it with, So it's not only, I mean, that just adds to everything, right? So for me, it's the idea of, especially me, who I do a lot of solo travel. I find it so amazing when I can share the experience, share the journey with people that I love, and that to me is like it just adds a certain sort of magic to life.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lucas, for those kind of three quick journeys. Of course, people can find many more details on those journeys and many more journeys in your book.
And
We have some great questions for you, but before we get to those, we have a quick word from our sponsor. The word from our sponsor, if you love grand journeys, I have an advanced copy of Rick's upcoming book on the Hippie Trail. So this is the story of Rick's grand journey from Istanbul to Kathmandu in 1978. It is not being released until February 4th, but you can pre-order it now. There is a link that Emily posted in the chat. And if you pre-order it, we have some fun incentives. You will get a vintage postcard from Rick and also have an access to a video of him reading a section. I also just want to point out, I know we have a lot of people that are avid followers of Rick and supporters of public broadcasting. There was a version of Rick's travel diary from the Hippie Trail that was released as a pledge premium. And this one will have resemblances, but it's been updated with a new preface, a new postscript from Rick. It has new and enlarged photos. It has been a little bit more meticulously edited for clarity and flow. And it is even going to come with a fold out map. This one is a soft cover since it's an advanced copy, but eventually it will also be a nice hardcover book. So if you want to read about that grand journey, there is a link to pre-order with those lovely incentives.
So, Gabe, something you didn't know about our sponsor today. I actually got a copy of that a few months ago when I was back in Seattle. I went out to dinner with Rick, and he was like nice enough to not only give me a copy, but I have a nice little description on it and everything too. But fantastic story, like really, really cool story, like really like a really cool glimpse of a younger traveler, who's very erudite, very like much drawn to the written word and everything and taking in everything he's seeing. I thought that was really, really cool.
And it's just today I was reading a section of it, and it's always fun for me as somebody that like watches every interview, watches and listens to every interview Rick does to see like the seeds of the sentences and stories that I have memorized by this
Yeah.
point. So I'm glad that you have that fun little keepsake, Lucas.
Yeah, really cool, man. The other thing I realized I forgot to mention was
Oh,
so in Riga and I did mean to mention it back in the Baltic. So I'm in Tallinn, of course. So Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, they're all known for doing little liqueurs, right? So I have my little Riga Black Magic, which they do serve in coffee too. So I had this in coffee, but I feel pretty good. It's 5 a.m. here, which means it's 5 p.m. somewhere. But it is my birthday. So, it is October.
that's right. It's
Yeah.
Tuesday. Happy
So
birthday.
I am Tuesday over here, October 8th, my 46th birthday. So I feel like 5 a.m. Happy birthday.
Well, a big happy birthday to you, Lucas. I'm so flattered that you shared your birthday with us.
Thanks. Yeah. And it's not often I have this at 5 a.m. I'll tell you that. It's warm.
Well, you are going to get to sleep really well after this. All right, we have a lot of wonderful questions for the
Oh,
birthday boy. So, the first question, we had actually quite a few questions about the Baltics in particular. And you talked a lot about the different languages. And Sarah was wondering, is English still fairly widely spoken in those countries? And then beyond that, if you did want to pick up a little bit of the language, what are your recommendations for preparing for that?
Yeah, so English is spoken decently well in tourism, taxi drivers. I haven't had a problem with English getting around. I do have some other languages that I could add, so I was like, is Spanish more of a thing? Is it Italian more of a thing? Is French more of a thing? Not really. Like English is kind of the way to go, as it is becoming more and more the case all around Europe. So you're getting by in English, I think, is fine. The thing I'll say is everybody's really friendly. So if you just want, like, the thing I've been doing is like, okay, so here I am. What are like I have my list of like words I want to learn, like, hello, goodbye, thank you, please, the really common things. So I just, what are my common greetings, that sort of thing. And people love that you want to learn that, So for me, I think everybody learns a little bit differently. For me, I have my little journal and I'm writing in my journal how I hear it. And then I'll repeat to somebody and I'll say, so is it like this? And they'll tell me kind of yes or no. Sometimes we're pretty close. Sometimes it's like, no, you heard that all wrong. It's a puh, not a buh, that sort of thing. And then just give yourself a lot of latitude. I mean, I don't think too many of us grow up with, Proto-Indo-European languages, like something we hear all the time. So just getting you're used to hearing some different, sounds and putting different vowels and consonants smashed together you might not have done before. You like give yourself a break, try, do the best you can. But I don't think unless you're here for longer, you probably aren't going to get more than a few words, I wouldn't imagine.
I agree. And I think, and unless you're in small towns these days, and of course you were going through the Baltic cities, in the cities, you're almost always going to find people that are very competent in English. I find that learning those little phrases is kind of a shortcut to meaningful connections. People warm up a little bit
Yep.
if they see that you've taken the effort to just learn some basic pleasantries in their
Mm.
language.
Yeah.
We also have a question from Bob that I connect with as a vegetarian. He's wondering, you said that there's a lot of meat and potatoes in the Baltics. Are there also a lot of different options for people with different dietary restrictions?
Yeah, so one of the things I noticed is so in Estonia, and well, I'll just say in Tallinn specifically, there are actually vegan vegetarian restaurants. I didn't see that across the rest of the Baltics. And that's something I do always take a look at. So you're going to be a bit more restricted in terms of local foods that you can eat. I mean, you're looking at like a lot of like cabbage and that sort of like there's a really nice beetroot soup we didn't talk about, but there's a like really, really great like vegan beetroot soup that's fantastic. It's like a cold gazpacho type soup. Has a heavy dill taste to it. That's great. There are some local dishes, but you're gonna probably, I mean, everywhere I went, there's also like Indian food and that sort of stuff too. So you might find yourself eating a little bit more kind of international cuisine and a lot of the chocolate,
We have an interesting question, Lucas, from Peppa. She's wondering, how long have you lived abroad for now outside of the United States?
Gosh, going on 20 years. Yeah.
20 years. She's asking, as somebody who's been an expat for so long, do you feel in any way like you started to lose any of your American identity, or do you still kind of feel that strongly in the places that you're going, that you're experiencing it as an American?
So weirdly, I feel more American living overseas than I do back in the US. In the US, I feel like a little bit of an oddball. So if you catch me like when we're back in Seattle, I feel a little strange back in Seattle. I feel like I'm not quite a Seattleite anymore. But as far as like nationally embodying like the US as a, kind of as a thing, there's this idea of being a great ambassador for your country, and that's what I've always tried to do. Like as I'm living overseas with all my interactions with people, I understand that I might be the first American they ever meet, or I might be one of the 10 they might met that day or something like that, but I want to be the best one. I want to just like have a really good sense of almost like my own way of doing like international politics, you know. But I would say I almost feel more American. Like sorry, so Peppa as a shortcut. I almost feel more American now than I probably ever have. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense that when it's more like juxtaposing you with your surroundings.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, Another good question. Bethany is wondering, kind of jumping to the Canary Islands now. Bethany was wondering if you could talk a little bit about kind of the indigenous culture of the Canary Islands. Are there still a lot of indigenous people that
Yes.
you can find there?
So really cool. Like we were talking about this before, I didn't get to it in the presentation, but so the people of the Canaries, the original indigenous people, actually came from North Africa. So if you go into the Amazigh, or also known as the Berbers, right, they also set sail and settled in the Canary Islands. So there are so many relations pre-Arab kind of conquer, pre-Phoenician, pre-Greek, pre-Roman that predate our history that I think is really interesting. And this is what that Sobo Gomera language comes from, right? So this is this sort of language that's coming from thousands and thousands and thousands of years of history that I just find fascinating, man. Like this sort of thing. And then for me, knowing Morocco and knowing a little bit of Amazigh and that indigenous language, hearing the locals and like where they still use some of this, I just again I find this all really cool. Yeah. So yeah, it's there. Sorry about the knee,
I
it's there.
Well, I have to confess, I had to, in preparing for this presentation, remind myself where the Canary Islands were on a map. And I realized, like, oh, they're kind of just off the coast of Morocco. So
Yeah.
I think it's fitting that since you're a Morocco expert, that you also talked with us about the Canary Islands.
Yeah. Yeah, which
And
to be fair, I hadn't been there until a few years ago.
oh, really?
Yeah,
Is
no,
it
it's one of
not
those.
common for people from Morocco to go vacation there?
No, because it's like usually Moroccans, the easiest trip is by ferry into Spain, or like because the colonial history, there's a lot of links with France and now with Belgium as well. So a lot more people will go visit family, and that's where they go. There's not too many Moroccans that settled in the Canary Islands. So even though there are a couple flights between like Agadir and Tenerife, yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of like Moroccan tourism there.
Um, and actually, Alan was asking, what's the best way to get to the Canary Islands? And once you're there, like, would it make sense if you're just going to kind of focus on one island to rent a car?
Yeah. So I did a bit of a combination on like so how we set this up in the book is the idea that you didn't need to necessarily rent a car and you would ferry between the different islands, right? So to get to the islands themselves, Madrid has the best connections. So like Madrid is like the Spanish hub. There's all sorts of connections. You can get there from a lot of European cities though. So there's flights from London, Paris, etc. There's a few different airports on a few different islands, again, similar to Hawaii. You could focus on one island. I think that's a really cool way to do it. I know when I go back to the Canaries, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just dig into one island. There's only probably a couple islands really worth doing that. The other ones are more of a day trip or just a really relaxing sort of 1 week. I'm going to chill on this island where not a lot of people get to. Because of the 8 islands, only 2 of them are heavily touristed. Like the Gran Canaria and Tenerife are the 2 that are pretty. You know, there's a lot of tourism there. When you get into like Lanzarote or Huerta or Gomera, or even La Palma, you know, some of the other ones, there's inhabitants there, there's towns there, but there's not like a ton to do, you know. So yeah, that'd be a more kind of relaxed week, I think, if you picked one of those.
All right. Well, Lucas, we have time for just one more question. Before we get to it, I want everyone to know we had to fill this date slot on a little bit shorter notice than usual. So, first of all, Lucas very sweetly pulled together this wonderful presentation, less time than usual. But not only that, we suggested to Lucas what we wanted to do, and he said, you know what? I think in these couple weeks before the show, I'm just going to go do 2 of these journeys. So Lucas went above and beyond to get fresh content, to relive some of these journeys, and to be able to deliver us this content. So, Lucas, we're very grateful. And my last question for you is, what is the next journey that you want to go on? Whether it's one in the book that you want to do again, or maybe it's one for the next book.
Dang. All right. It's in Europe, like the next Europe journey I want to do.
Any journey.
Oh man,
Let's
like
keep it on planet Earth.
yeah, keep it on planet Earth. That's tough, man. Because I like, yeah, I want to go back to Japan. I want to do Southeast Asia. I do want to do an African safari. I haven't done a safari yet. I really want to do this. The thing is, like, for me, it's more like I'm already planning trips. So like, I'll go back home. I have a couple weeks. And then pretty soon I'll be back on the road doing some stuff in Morocco. And weirdly, I'm like psyched to go back and explore like the anti-Atlas and stuff like that. So that's kind of where my head's at right now. I think if I had to look at Europe, particularly if there's one I wanted to do, Hmm. I'm really looking at exploring the Dolomites in like late August, early September next year, and I think that's the one I'm most excited about in Europe. I just feel like I need to get out and do some hiking, and I've only done one brief hike in the Dolomites, so I'm looking forward to like putting together like a week long hike, and hopefully getting like off a couple of the major trails there and hitting some of the other little moments, little spots. So I'm putting that together with a good friend of mine, Alexi Cohen, who actually writes a really cool guidebook for with Moon for Rome, Florence, and Venice. So yeah, so I think Dolomites. I'll get that. That's my next like European one. I'm really stoked about, man. Like I love getting out in nature. That's the thing. Like I'm like, as much as I love the cities and I love the cafe cultures and stuff, I just have a big appreciation for getting out in nature, you know. So anytime I can like take off on a few day hike, like that to me feels like luxury, you know, when I'm out like hiking in nature, my phone's off and I'm just kind of it feels great.
Well, I am eager to hear about your Dolomites trip. I wish you safe travels back to Morocco, and maybe this time next year you'll be back talking with us about the Dolomites. So,
I
thank you
hope
very
so.
much, Lucas, for taking time on your birthday. And we are wishing you happy travels and a happy birthday.
Thanks, kid. Bye, guys.
And for all of you Monday Night Travelers, I will remind you that our next journey is going to be next week when we go around Germany to discover some of the lesser visited destinations, everything from the Lake Constance area to some of the Hanseatic hubs in the north and some great mid-sized cities in between. So Ben Green and I look forward to exploring that with all of you next Monday. Until then, have an excellent week.